Can we... Sorry, that was a bad crack. Can we talk about this? We've covered a lot of topics on this show. With 35 episodes, we've talked about everything from tanks to mages to everyone's favorite, of course, more tanks. It's no question that there are some classes that the meta will always favor, and some classes that are forced back into the recesses of our subconscious, waiting for their perfect opportunity to strike, only to be nerfed into the ground a millisecond later. Oh, it's alright there, little Timmy. The monsters got nerfed. You can beat them up now. Balancing assassins is a lose-lose situation. Whenever they're relevant, everyone seems to lose their shit and throw a riot. And whenever they're irrelevant, everyone seems to lose their shit and throw a riot. And it's because assassins kind of stand for everything that League of Legends is against. They're strong, independent carries who don't need no team. And since League has recently been doing just about everything to make team synergy more important than ever, being an assassin main these days is kind of like being an architect forced to do open heart surgery. Yeah, you know how to make buildings, but can you make this man alive? It seems these days, more often than not, being a jungle assassin is never as good as being a jungle tank, and for good reason. With the enhanced locket, Knight's Vow, Gargoyle Stone Plate, and God knows what else, tank junglers are stronger than they've ever been. I mean, how are you supposed to win against a Cho'Gath comp if he can shield his team for 3,000 health for a few seconds, negating burst, literally eliminating all that the assassin brings in the first place? But of course, this requires everyone to be on the same page. And since most League of Legends games consist of 2 chimpanzees, 1 rocket scientist, an average Joe, and half a corn dog forgotten in the backseat of a car long enough to achieve sentience, some assassins can still get away with ruining the game for everyone else. Kha'Zix is a walking jump scare. The only thing he's missing is the ominous band to punctuate the fact that he's about to put each of your butt cheeks on a different side of the map. The first half of his passive, Isolation, forces your team to adapt a little-known tactic we learned in summer camp called the buddy system, which in and of itself is a flawed idea. If you and your 13-year-old friend get seen by a bear or a coyote, you're still gonna lose that fight. In fact, you're now twice as delicious as you were before. Why did they teach us that? Stepping away from your team while against a Kha'Zix is basically extending an invitation to be eaten. Being isolated grants Kha'Zix a few special interactions, including an 80% slow on his evolved W, if you swing that way, or a 65% damage increase on his Q, while negating 45% of his Q CD. Putting this at about a 1-second CD, which isn't even long enough to tell your loved ones that you're not coming home. The only thing that can make you look more delicious than being squishy and alone is a couple dabs of Skooch's B2 steak sauce. You can't spell Dipatulicious without B2. The second half of Kha'Zix's passive is to deal bonus damage on his next attack after he steps out of vision, making his need to scare the shit out of you that much more apparent. Not to mention that this is basically the exact same thing as Duskblade, making him have 2 things that empower his next auto attack after he jumps out of vision, turning your game into a goddamn Stephen King novel. Every time Kha'Zix levels his ultimate, he can evolve one of his abilities, which defines his playstyle for the rest of the game, and each of them are decent. His Q gives him higher sustained damage, which makes it easier to win the few trades that last longer than half a second. His W gives him an 80% slow and more spikes if you have trouble catching people after they flash out and shit themselves. His E gives his jump a longer range and a reset whenever he gets a kill. Level this skill up to be a playmaker. And his R is probably the scariest evolution in his kit right now. I'm saying probably because all of this is up to opinion. Since it causes him to invis every time he enters a bush, use it to constantly proc your Duskblade in your passive. Not to mention that it grants exceptional mobility, and if used right, it can keep him invisible through his entire walk through the red side jungle. And I said invisible, not camouflage, meaning even pink wards cannot see him. It's fucked up. Kha'Zix is an amazing assassin, not to mention that his sustain in the jungle is pretty good due to his W healing him if he's near the explosions of his spikes. His clear time is amazing, his ganks are powerful, and most importantly, he can change his playstyle to what he needs the most. Unfortunately, Kha'Zix mains almost never have a place in the meta, so meaning Kha'Zix is the equivalent of being homeless, which is fine because, you know,
change is good.
Thank you for watching this week's episode of Can We Talk About This? If there's something else you want to talk about, leave it in the comment section below and I'll be sure to get to it. Also, Spooktober's coming up, so get ready for a lot more horror stuff because I am excited to play some horror games that I left up in the back burner. Besides that, I don't think there's any more announcements. Worlds is starting, so I might do more League content. Not entirely sure yet. And I think that's all I have to say. So that's it. Love you.